Hi friends! Guess what? It's Fiction Friday again! So that means we're continuing our ongoing story, A Dog's Tale by Mark Twain. Today we'll be reading the final part 2 of chapter 3, and then next week we'll move on to something new. In the first part of chapter 3, our hero, the dog Eileen, rescued her human's baby from a fire in the nursery. How very brave! But her human daddy didn't understand what was going on when he saw Eileen dragging the baby into the hallway, so he struck her. How awful. So now Eileen is hurting and in hiding from her master. Her family is calling for her, but Eileen doesn't know if they want to hurt her again or not. Poor Eileen. If you missed the previous part to chapter 3, the link is in the description below. Now let's find out what happens to our beloved doggy friend. They called and called, days and nights it seemed to me, so long that the hunger and thirst near drove me mad, and I recognized that I was getting very weak. When you are this way, you sleep a great deal, and I did. Once I woke in an awful fright. It seemed to me that the calling was right there in the garret. And so it was. It was Sadie's voice, and she was crying. My name was falling from her lips all broken. Poor thing, and I could not believe my ears for the joy of it when I heard her say, "Come back to us. Oh, come back to us and forgive. It is all so sad without our—" I broke in with such a grateful little yelp, and the next moment Sadie was plunging and stumbling through the darkness and the lumber and shouting for the family to hear, "She's found! She's found!" The days that followed, well, they were wonderful. The mother and Sadie and servants, why, they just seemed to worship me. They couldn't seem to make me a bed that was fine enough. And as for food, they couldn't be satisfied with anything but game and delicacies that were out of season. And every day the friends and neighbors flocked in to hear about my heroism. That was the name they called it by, and it means agriculture. I remember my mother putting it on a kennel once, and explaining it in that way, but didn't say what agriculture was, except that it was synonymous with intramural incandescence. And a dozen times a day, Mrs. Gray and Sadie would tell the tale to newcomers and say I risked my life to save the babies, and both of us had burns to prove it. And then the company would pass me around and pet me and exclaim about me, and you could see the pride in the eyes of Sadie and her mother. And when the people wanted to know what made me limp, they looked ashamed and changed the subject. And sometimes when people hunted them this way and that way with questions about it, it looked to me as if they were going to cry. And this was not the only glory, no. The master's friends came, a whole 20 of the most distinguished people, and had me in the laboratory and discussed me as if I were a kind of discovery. And some of them said it was wonderful and a dumb beast, the finest exhibition of instinct they could call to mind. But the master said, with vehemence, it's far above instinct, it's reason, and many a man privileged to be saved and go with you and me to a better world by right of its possession, has less of it than this poor silly quadruped that's foreordained to perish. And then he laughed and said, "Well, look at me. I'm a sarcasm, bless you, with all my grand intelligence. The only thing I inferred was that this dog had gone mad and was destroying the child. Whereas, but for the beast's intelligence, it's reason, I tell you, the child would have perished." They disputed and disputed, and I was the very center of subject of it all. And I wished my mother could have known that this grand honor had come to me. It would have made her proud. So, this is where we are ending our story. Sorry for the short session today, but there is more to this story that is perfectly awful, and I refuse to read it. Let's just end on a happy note, shall we? Our doggy friend Eileen is back home with her puppy. Her family loves her, and all is right with the world. She is brave and courageous for saving her human's baby from the fire in the nursery, and she deserves every good thing that life has to offer. There. Story over. Next week we'll start a new story with a better ending, I promise. So be sure to tune in for that. And on Monday we'll have our next Music Monday song. I love these songs. They're so much fun to sing. And I like telling you about my life as a puppy through them. And on Wednesday we'll have our next wiki article about animals that live in the ocean. Or as I like to think of it, animals that swim better than Pupper pie. So be sure to subscribe so you can join in all the fun. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Bye.